How Riding Got Her Red Hood. Long ago, at the edge of a dark, wild wood, there lived a girl named Riding. You may think that is a strange name for a young girl, but you must remember that this was a very long time ago, and names were different back then. Riding lived alone, her mother and father being dead, and her only relation was her old grandmother who lived deep in the wood. Riding was a resourceful girl, however, and knew how to cook and clean and sew clothes. She had sewn herself a cape of white deerskin with a matching white hood, of which she was very proud. Deciding it was time to pay her grandmother a visit, and wanting to show off her handiwork, she packed a basket of fresh buns and jam and set off into the forest, wearing her white cape and hood. Now, as it happened, in this forest there also lived an evil old man. He was no danger to Riding's grandmother, for she was old and wrinkled and not at all attractive to him. He liked young girls, as young as Riding, or younger, whom he would trap and kill and eat and do all sorts of other horrible things to. He was such an evil man that it was easy to see from looking at his face. His eyes would stare and his mouth would snap open and closed as he spoke, making a horrible cluppering sound. He was so recognizable that he fled into the forest to escape the families of his previous victims. Still fearful of being discovered, he went out and killed one of the wolves who also lived in the forest, skinned it, and ever after wore the skin as a disguise. A fine disguise it was, too, as the man was a good hand with a knife and had done an excellent job of preserving the hide. He perfected a way of walking silently on all fours, just like a wolf, and wore specially padded shoes and gloves, so he left paw prints instead of footprints. So when he saw young Riding tripping happily through the forest in her bright white cape with the white hood up over her head, he hurried home and put on his wolf suit, and then waited on the road for her. Now when Riding saw what appeared to be a wolf standing in the road, she stopped. She knew that wolves were wild and vicious creatures, but also that they were not inherently evil. If one was willing to stop and talk with her, then she thought she should treat it with respect. "Hello," said Riding, greeting the wolf with a short bow.
"Hello, little girl,"
said the wolf.
"Where are you going?"
"I'm going to visit my gran," said Riding, for if all the wolf wanted to know was where she was going, she saw no harm in that.
"Where does your gran live?"
asked the wolf. "Why, she lives at the end of this road," said Riding, wondering why a wolf, who lived in the forest, had not noticed her gran's house yet.
"I see,"
said the wolf, who, it must be remembered, was not really a wolf, but the evil man pretending to be a wolf.
"I shall go ahead and tell her you are coming, shall I? Take your time. Maybe you can pick her a bouquet of flowers on the way."
"Why, that is very kind of you," said Riding, who knew it was in her best interest to be polite to the wolf. "Thank you. I will."
"Goodbye,"
said the wolf, and sprang off down the road. Now it must be said that the evil man was also clever, and fond of elaborate plans. So while Riding dillied and dallied, picking daisies and clover by the wayside, he ran as fast as he could to Riding's grandmother's house. He knocked on the door, and when the old woman opened it, he forced his way inside and killed her with a single blow. Then, even though she was old and stringy and didn't look very good tasting, he cut up her body and baked it into a pie, and poured her blood into a wine jar and hid her bones under the bed. He hid the wolf suit under the bed as well, and then climbed under the blankets, tied on the grandmother's bonnet, and waited. Meanwhile, Riding, picking flowers and not suspecting a thing, heard an animal growling in the bushes. "Who is there?" she asked.
"I am the wolf,"
said the growls. "The one from before?" asked Riding hopefully.
"That was no wolf,"
said the growling voice, and Riding thought she saw a four-legged shadow creeping between the trees.
"That was an abomination, a man who takes pleasure in torturing and killing his own pups. He slew my brother, and now he uses his skin as a disguise. His disguise is that of a wolf, but he is something much, much worse and more dangerous to you."
"Oh dear," said Riding.
"I will accompany you to your grandmother's house," said the growling wolf. "If your grandmother is safe within, I will leave you there. But if things seem wrong, rap 3 times and I will come in."
"That is very kind of you," said Riding.
"Not at all," growled the wolf. "I long to avenge my brother."
So Riding went the rest of the way to her grandmother's house, now very nervous and not a little frightened. She was quite relieved when, in response to her knock on the door, she heard her grandmother's voice call, "Come in, my dear, come in. Don't mind me. I've a bit of a cold and I'm stuck in bed." "Poor Gran," thought Riding, letting herself in. "Good thing I have brought her buns and jam. That should make her feel better." She peered into the bedroom and saw what she thought was her Gran lying in the bed, wearing the little bonnet Riding had made for her last winter. "Here, Gran, I've made you buns and jam," said Riding, offering her the basket. "How very kind of you, dear," said her Gran, who, you must remember, was not really her Gran, but the evil man pretending to be her Gran. "Just leave it by the foot of the bed. I've baked you a pie, and there's some wine in the kitchen for you. Go eat and drink. You must be hungry and thirsty." And Riding, seeing nothing wrong with this, went into the kitchen. But when she took the pie out, she found it was a meat pie, not the fruity kind she liked, and the wine was not wine, but blood. With a horrible turning in her stomach, she realized something was very wrong, and she ran and rapped, as hard and loud as she could, on the front door. "What is wrong, my dear?" called her grandmother, but not her grandmother, for now Riding could tell that the difference in the voice was not from a cold. "Nothing, dear Gran," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. If she screamed and let the evil man know she'd caught on, he might run away, and then the wolf would not have his vengeance. So she went back into the bedroom and took up her basket. "Here," she said, "let me feed you some buns." "I'm not hungry for buns," said the person in her grandmother's bed. "I'm hungry for you!" And the man sprang out of the bed, wearing only her grandmother's bonnet, and grabbed at Riding, who scrambled backward and tripped over the end of the bed. She fell on the floor, and the man would have had her then, except at that moment the wolf, who'd been having some trouble with the handle of the front door, leapt clean over her into the room and sank his fangs into the evil man's throat. After the wolf had made sure the evil man was dead, Riding took off her white cape and hood and dyed them red in his blood. They burned the rest of the man in a great fire, but they buried the remains of her grandmother and the wolf's brother side by side under a great oak tree in the middle of the forest. Riding no longer lives in the house by the wood, but in her grandmother's cottage. There she cooks and cleans and sews, and when bad men stumble into the wood seeking a place to hide, she puts on her blood-red cape and hood and goes and finds her friend, the wolf, and together they go hunting. The end. This has been How Riding Got Her Red Hood. Written, illustrated, and performed by Goldeen Ogawa for All Hallows Read 2014. Thank you for listening, and happy Halloween.